Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of Shadowsong by Jae-Jones. This is the second book in the Winter Song duology, and this book was sent to me by the publisher for review consideration. It is out on February 8th of this year. So like I said, this book is the second book in a duology. I have done a review for the first book, which I will link on the screen for you to check out. So while I didn't love Winter Song, the first book, as much as I was hoping to, I still thought it had some potential to improve upon things in the second book in the series. I still thought it had some hopes for it, but this book let me down in a lot of ways. So this book picks up shortly after the events of the first book and is kind of following the repercussions of Liesl's time spent with the Goblin King and in the underground. So first off, I'm going to talk about the world building. One thing I really liked about the first book was the world building, and that continues in here, although we didn't get as much of those world building elements as we had in the first book. So the first book has a lot more of the underground and this like eerie nature. There's a lot of that still just above ground, so that's the element that I really liked. There are a couple like creature type things that are seen. There's also some really weird kind of like mansions that are a little twisted and dark gardens and stuff like that that I really like. So it almost leans more like Jane Eyre Wuthering Heights feeling in that way, with a little more magic mixed in than like those kinds of stories, but it kind of that like gothic romance type story feel to it. So I really liked that, but I was wanting more out of that, and that is just kind of the theme of this whole thing. So next, let me talk about our characters. So as I said with the first book, this book had a lot of character actions not quite making sense and being inconsistent. So their inconsistencies were consistent throughout the series, but I just wanted so much more out of them. There's actually an author's note in the beginning of this that says that Jae-Jones wanted to depict more of how the family, especially Liesl and her brother, are bipolar, that they have a, like bipolar disorder, and this is an own voices thing that's mentioned in the author's note, and I was really looking forward to seeing that, but unfortunately this element of their personality was more told instead of shown. So while we have a lot of time spent on Liesl thinking about how could anyone love her when she has these manic episodes and these depressive episodes and all this stuff, we don't actually see her acting like that a ton. So there's a lot of just like inner dialogue happening in this story, and that's the thing, is that a lot of the story is that. There's also some character interactions and character relationships that feel so different from the first book. So for example, Liesl and her brother have a very, very close bond in the first book, and that bond is sort of gone, and it's understandable why that's gone, but at times it's also not, like, why you guys have been so close, like, it doesn't really ring true. So a lot of things I liked about the first book, again, like their interactions, wasn't really there. And then we have the other element, which I was like stunned that it was missing, and that is the element of the Goblin King and Liesl's relationship and interactions. Mostly non-existent in this book, and I know to some people that's going to be a spoiler, but honestly I feel like you have to know that before going into this, because it's like, this isn't a trilogy, this is a duology, and yet we have non-existent interactions between the romantic leads, because this is mostly supposed to be like a romantic fantasy story, and there was so much promise within the first book and their interaction in the first book. I liked their interactions towards the second half of the first book, and then just a whole lot of nothing. There's also a theme in here of equating like madness to artistry and artistic genius, and that you kind of can't have one without the other, and I think that is a very dangerous stereotype that I hate seeing, because so many people haven't gotten mental health treatment or haven't gotten treatment for drug abuse or something because they feel like they need that to create their art, and that's just not true. And to see that in the narrative and not have that really corrected was really disappointing and very frustrating. There's also a lot of characters that aren't fully utilized, and characters that are dropped in as side characters that are so minor that you could have done more with. We could have spent more time away from Liesl, honestly. She is sort of a boring character, and again, her actions are just being told to us by her instead of shown, and there's like all these side elements. This could kind of go with the world building too, but it's almost a character thing as well. There's elements of the Wild Hunt in here. The Wild Hunt is one of my favorite folklore myths I love it, and you can do so much with it, and it is just completely underutilized. So I'll actually talk about the plot with this. There's a lot of plot elements that are just underutilized and just thrown in and then not used to their full potential or even a fraction of their potential. There's also a lack of plot. There's a lack of, like, I don't really know why we needed this much book for what happened. Honestly, the books could be meshed together and that would have been sufficient. They also felt like two very different stories, and that they weren't really, this wasn't really a continuation of the first book. It just felt so tonally different from the first book, and the promises the first book kind of laid out, it just didn't deliver on, and it was just so different in a very bad way. I was so disappointed because it felt just like a waste of time. I didn't really know, like, what did this tell me new about the characters? Really nothing. There was a lot of, like, you know, mysteries about the Goblin King are going to be revealed, and it was very, very little stuff that, again, could have been revealed in the first book if you just cut some of that down, cut some of this down, and mash them together. It just failed to deliver in so many ways. It failed to deliver a lot of the world building. It failed to deliver a lot of the characters. It was so much tell and not show. And it was just, what was it for? It was mostly boring, which is so disappointing because I so wanted to really like the second book so that I could kind of justify the sort of 3-star of the first book. But this was just so disappointing in so many ways, which is disappointing because it's one of the first books that I read this year. But it was just not what I was hoping for at all. And a lot of the things that I really liked from the first book were missing. And then new good things weren't added in. So overall, this book was a very big letdown. So I gave this book 1.5 out of 5 stars. The 0.5 was for some of those world building elements that were good and had potential and had some, like, feeling and atmosphere to them. But like I said, overall, the characters were bland. It was telling and not showing. There was no interaction between the romantic leads, and it was just a huge letdown. So comment down below, let me know what you thought of Shadowsong. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all you guys soon. Bye.